This call is being recorded.
The phone was acting up a little bit. I had a hard time getting into there you go. Okay, it's a lot better now. Hey, so what I'm trying to remember where we left off yesterday. I was rewatching the video and it was about halfway through. I know we were talking about Marilyn Monroe and Britney Spears and all that. But what was gonna be our second topic?
Well, I wanted to reiterate just a little bit. I was listening over our last interview too, and the interviews that we're doing are so great because I think first and foremost, it's proving to the common person on the street they can create their own media outlet. And I just want to
Yeah.
congratulate you. You know, we got to pat ourselves on the back, even though the caller, even though our viewers aren't really donating as we would expect for the wealth of knowledge we've been delivering. We have, they're not going to get this on CNN.
Right.
That's just the facts. And, I was listening over our interview, and I was amazed at the knowledge people don't know. People saw Martha Stewart go to prison. They didn't know Wesley Snipes went to prison.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know Mr. Biggs or Ron Isley went to prison from the Isley brothers. They didn't know, all these people over the years. Even remember Tim Allen from Home Improvement?
Yeah, he went to prison for cocaine before he got his career back, right?
Yeah. People sometimes, I've had detractors in the past sit there and talk about me from like 15, when I was 17 years old. Me and some young preppy kids stole some beer out of a garage, and I got put on probation for it, and I violated the probation, which is easy to do at 17, and
Right.
I ended up in prison for a short period, and I've had hecklers over the years just sit there and, talk about I'm a criminal for stealing some beer out of a garage when I was 17. And
Mm-hmm.
people say, oh my God, Jameel, you were in jail? You went to prison? I said, yeah, okay. Tim Allen from Home Improvement went through the same prison I did.
Right.
Tim Allen went to the penitentiary over cocaine dealing. Am I correct?
Yeah, you are, and that's what's so ludicrous about this is people are getting heckled for things that we already know substance abuse or anything like that is something that's controversial as far as the sentencing laws. They're putting people in jail for smoking weed or having like an ounce on them, or if you're drinking and driving, then yeah, you deserve to go. But
Tim Allen was in prison, and I like Tim Allen, by the way. This isn't in any way a put down on Tim Allen. I think Tim Allen is a spectacular actor. My grandfather loved his show, Home Improvement. I used to watch the Tim Allen show all the time. It was a Detroit show. I'm from Michigan. I really enjoyed all Tim Allen's work in the film industry. But when people say, you were in jail, you went to prison, I say, you know what? Yeah, I went to the penitentiary, but I went to the same penitentiary Tim Allen went to. Get real. And every time I go down, we were talking about, I would love to go down almost every year, all throughout the year. I go down on the Sunset Strip. You know where the Laugh Factory is?
you said the Sunset Strip and what looks.
The Sunset Strip is in West Hollywood by the house. You got the House of Blues right there. Then you got the Whiskey Go Go, which was famous for way back in the '60s with the Doors, with the Mamas and the Papas and the Doors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they used to all go to Whiskey Go Go. Whiskey Go Go was huge in the '60s, right below Laurel Canyon, and next to the House of Blues over there that's called the Playground, where all the stars go late at night on the weekends and stuff. And they got the Laugh Factory and the Comedy Store. And Tim Allen's from Michigan, and he's so famous at the Laugh Factory on West Sunset Boulevard. And I used to go down there and hang out and have drinks and stuff. You know the Asian guy from Mad TV?
Yeah.
What's his name? Jimmy? What's his name?
I think it's Jimmy.
Yeah, he is so funny. The little Asian guy from Mad TV. I remember
Mm-hmm.
I used to go down there and watch him do comedy on stage. at the it was at
Oh,
the
that's
Comedy
great.
Store right there. Yeah, and I
Yeah,
used to
man, that's
go in there.
awesome.
Yeah, I used to go in there in West Hollywood, and what he's famous on Mad TV on Fox. I used to go in there, and after he did his comedy show, I would say hi to him and talk to him a little bit. He was such a funny guy. He those guys down there at the comedy show, they're so funny. He used to have all these jokes about being Asian and how his parents expected him to get higher test scores because he was hilarious. He was hilarious. And I got cousins who are Asian, married into the family, so he blew my mind. He had me laughing so hard. But
Is it, I guess I had decided to look for him just because I feel like there's been a lot of Asian actors that I might get him confused with. Is his name Robert Lee Jr.? Like,
I just know he's the Asian guy. I couldn't tell you his name for nothing. I just know he's the Asian guy on ITP. But
yes, it says if this is him, it says he's Korean descent, and he was like on Mad TV from 2001 to 2009. He was in like Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. Dude, he was in Pineapple Express, The Dictator.
right,
Yeah,
right.
look
I
at him,
couldn't. I
familiar.
couldn't tell. Right, but we that's kind of like where we left off on the last interview was we were talking about Britney Spears and the movie industry and all that stuff. And there's so you can just go down the line. Hey, hell, people think famous people got it easy. There's so many famous people who've been in and out of jail. I mean, look at Martin
Mhm.
Luther King. Martin Luther King was in jail more than anybody,
Mhm.
and all he did was be black. He was in jail just because he was black, and Martin Luther King was in jail every week.
Right. He was just doing his reach out work, and then you got what was it? Robert Downey Jr. He had his heroin addiction. Man, he was in the pen for like it was more than a couple of years. It was actually a long time,
Right,
and it
right,
was a big deal when he got out and got his career back.
right, right. Yeah, you got all kinds of people in showbiz been to prison. That's nothing new. And so people
Right.
say, oh, Jameel got some interviews. He's on the internet. And he was in jail. Okay, well, there's a lot of other famous people. You know, there's you got to explain stuff to people like they're stupid in today's world. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I do because it's the same thing as we've touched on other subjects that we don't do as targeting stuff, and there's a lot of people who say, well, they got sectioned. They got sectioned. They were in the mental hospital, so therefore it must not be true. And it's the same thing with
Yeah.
celebrities. It's like saying, well, you went to prison. Martha Stewart went to prison, so I'm not going to make any of her recipes anymore. I might catch a virus from her and like go to prison myself. It's just like weird, superstitious thinking.
And Martha Stewart, when I was growing up, I ended up going to Grand Haven High School for part of the time I was growing up in Grand Haven, Michigan. And I remember Martha Stewart owned a house, I believe, in downtown Grand Haven. She owned a summer house down there. I don't know if she ever went there or not, but she supposedly owned the house, and all my friends were talking about it. And Martha Stewart's so cool. Remember when she was making food? Wasn't it her on TV with Snoop Dogg?
Yeah, I think they still have their show right now.
Yeah, her, Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg. I enjoyed that so much to see Snoop Dogg go from sleeping in cars, living in Long Beach, sleeping in cars, to on national television with Martha Stewart cooking meals and stuff. And Snoop Dogg had to go through a lot of persecution too, just because he was a rapper.
Mhm.
But
Yeah,
Josh,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it's a great pairing between the two of them. And I was kind of thinking today too about, like you were saying, like we don't necessarily have that many people listening to us right now, but
Right.
I feel like there's some channels if we could get at least even just you to be able to interview with them might help get more people to your channel. I don't know if you watch. Let's see, what's this guy's name? There's a guy in I think it's Scotland. It's called the Richie Allen Show, and he does a lot of different topics. He might be somebody that would talk to you about. I mean, interesting to come up with. I'm not sure if he's open to all sorts of topics. And then the other thing I was going to say that I think would be another interesting topic beyond maybe just this phone call because it might take up time, but sort of the evolution of new film industries because I mean LA is basically that town was like built around the film industry, but
Definitely.
now we've got Austin, Atlanta, Minneapolis, and Austin especially where I used to live has always been known as they call it the live music capital of the world. We've got South by Southwest, we've got Sixth Street, and when Austin Bergstrom moved and closed down, they turned those old airport hangars into film studios. There used to be all sorts of streets shut down when I lived there. They're making Austin, but it's one of those things where the industry, like some part of the industry, maybe a little bit people who are a little bit more independent or don't have the money, saw it as opportunity and they came there and they put that type of work there. But the influence it has on the culture of the city is different because it's like an afterthought. It's not the city was built on the way that Los Angeles was. That seems like you get a lot of insight from thinking about that. I think that's like would be a great topic to cover sometime. It's just like the urban planning influence of different industries. Because Los Angeles is, I mean, there's people that live there that don't care. They don't care that's what's going on, but that's still like it's the main employer. It's like the main employer of that city. And I find that kind of fascinating, to be honest. The whole city is built
Yeah.
on entertainment.
It is built on entertainment. One of my favorite areas is the Laurel Canyon area, and that goes back, of course, to the '60s. And we had an amazing conversation not too long ago about how a lot of good rock bands in the '60s got ruined because of the Vietnam War. The drummers,
Mm-hmm.
the drum, a lot of garage. There were so many good garage bands in the 1960s. Some of them made it to the radio, others of them didn't, but they were fantastic garage bands in the '60s in the LA area. And
Yeah.
because of the Vietnam War, hey, a drummer would get drafted, the band had to break up. The lead singer would get drafted, the band had to break up. And
Mm-hmm.
the Laurel Canyon area had some of the most best entertainment and celebrities you could ask for. And I remember one day I was walking by Jim Morrison's house, which right above Sunset Boulevard, you have Laurel Canyon Boulevard, and it runs all the way up to San Fernando Valley, of course, right? But I was over at their little store right there, the Laurel Canyon store, and I was hanging out, and I was talking to one of the people who worked there, and they were like, "Yeah, that's Jim Morrison's house over here, and the mamas and the papas used to hang out over there back in '67." And I used to, man, but the people down there on the Sunset Strip, they don't know anything about Laurel Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
They're so into the trends, the modern trends of here and today. If you ask them
Yeah.
about something that happened beyond 5 years ago, they don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't
don't
even know the history of the place they're living in.
Yeah, I like, because I'm sitting there talking about Al Jardine from the Beach Boys and Jimi Hendrix and of course the Byrds, and the Byrds was like the first real good song that embraced the hippie movement that was mainstream. Remember that? Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man,
Yeah.
remember that?
Yeah.
Right. And around that time, you had Richard Elpert, who later became Ram Dass, in the Hills, and they were exploring consciousness through the psychedelic revolution, and
Mm-hmm.
you had that was a really amazing time in the 1960s, and the entertainment industry since then has changed so much. Like, now they're bringing the vinyls back into the stores, which is cool because you can look at the album covers. But the entertainment industry has changed so much since that time. The movies have changed so much. The music has changed so much. Musicians don't even make records like they used to.
Right.
And
Something that really, I was just say real quick, this actually as a musician myself, growing up, I was born in 1974, so like albums were still there even when tapes and CDs were coming out. We were making that transition. And I just remember it's like I love my albums. I love like the full sleeve with the lyrics printed on it. And the only reason I accepted compact discs is partly it's forced on you because you buy a new car and you don't got a tape player or anything anymore that you might have taped your records onto. But at least the CDs were still a booklet with artwork and lyrics, and so it was like a mini album. And they even took that away. And the thing of it is, if you were to say, okay, well, it's this real convenient, I'm going to do this over the internet, but if you want my album artwork and the lyrics, you need to own a printer. You need to have all the ink in the printer. You need to have the right type of paper. If you want it to be pretty, you might want photo paper instead of like regular typewriter paper. And that's like just blows my mind that it's almost like the computer industry took over the entertainment industry because they now own the mediums.
It did. And one of the things that startles me is what the computer, the internet, and this new age popcorn stuff has. 40-year-olds look like they're 15-year-olds now. I'm not joking. There's something going on, because I remember one night I was on Hollywood Boulevard hanging out with some of my friends, and I was at it was a club, and they had a little hookah lounge and stuff like that, and I was hanging out one night, and I went over to one of the bars, and I went in there and I was hanging out, and some woman came in there, and I had a few drinks. I was with my friends. I put on like some older song and stuff like that, and I was asking the people questions. I was with my friends. We were talking about Laurel Canyon, driving back up there, going back up there the next morning, and so I'm in the bar, and a woman comes in there, and she's like 40-something years old, and she has her hair dyed purple or red or something like that, and she's trying, she's like, this is a punk rock club, this is a punk rock bar, and I'm looking at her like, you're 40-something years old, you look like you're 15. What's going on here? Did the internet do this to you? Did the internet do that to her? I've never seen somebody 40 years old dressed like they're 15.
Right.
With holes in their jeans and she looked like a Puerto Rican hooker.
I'm sorry I'm laughing so hard. It's kind of like, I feel like a lot of people, even myself included, because I'm pretty young looking, but that's my genetics, man. I can't help it. But I feel like youth is being extended because so many people under the current system, I don't know, but just like in the world, so many people are having their milestones taken from them. They're not succeeding. They're not following what used to be the life path of like you're adult by this age, you have kids, you're married, you've got this and that. There's a lot of people that doesn't happen in the ABC way for them, and so they kind of stay like Peter Pan, like, I'm not old yet, there's still hope for me. And I feel for those people because I've been there. But, as far as like ways of dressing, that is something that's like, you would hope that maybe they would just change it or something. I've known people that are that age and they still dress that way, and I think of them sometimes when I'm dressing myself, and I'm like, if I wear this outfit and I meet somebody new and they ask me how old I am and I tell them I'm in my 40s, am I going to be embarrassed? If I'm going to be embarrassed, I better put on something a little bit different,
Right.
But that's kind of like the but in a weird way, it is kind of like the hippie mentality, because it's like if you're just free to do you, then maybe you are 50 years old and you still like wearing T-shirts with like Superman on them. I mean, whose business is it really? But you understand that people are going to look at you and be, why is that guy dressed that way? So
Right.
that's all. That's a whole topic. I'm sorry, I just kind of went off on a tangent with that, but I mean, I've seen what you're talking about in myself and in other people.
It just wasn't. It just. It was just shocking to see somebody 40-something years old devote it wasn't just the dress code. See somebody 40 years old devote themselves to punk rock like they're 15 or something like that. It just threw me off, because.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, man, I didn't even think about that, but that's like well, that's the
Yeah.
whole thing of music changing, like you're saying, like music changing and people sticking to the old ways. And I feel like, there was an article actually the other day I saw, somebody wrote an opinion piece, and they said if you don't like modern pop music, it's because your tastes are still stuck at 14. And as much as that hurts, I could relate to that because as I've grown older, I find it harder and harder to find music that I really like. And I do find myself going back to stuff that I loved when I was a teenager and saying, nobody's doing this. But, maybe there's a point to that. Maybe their style or their approach to music was something that is a good thing that is not being done right now, and that's why I like it. You know,
Mhm.
um, but I mean, I try to listen to everything with an open mind, but I can definitely see how at a certain point, um, if technology, again with the computers and stuff, if technology is changing too fast. I mean,
It,
think
well,
about our parents. You
technology
think
is also. Go on, go on.
I was gonna say, think about like like Lou Rawls himself, like his style of music, and then if he like had somebody come over to his house with a laptop and they were just like, boom, boom, yeah, yeah, fuck this shit, fuck everything, like, and that's a dance song, and he has to sit there and go, that's a dance song.
Right,
you
right.
know, you just you'd be like, what the
And Lou,
fuck, man?
and people like Lou Rawls. Lou Rawls grew up on the south side of Chicago. And Lou Rawls was a gospel singer.
Mm-hmm.
Lou Rawls grew up in the ghetto. He Lou Rawls grew up in the projects. Very very quick learner. He was a gospel singer. He got involved in the music industry, and you see him with Dean Martin and all those guys. He ended up in the film industry and doing music, and
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't imagine those older guys back then using a laptop. And even when
Right.
it comes to actors, I had the privilege of speaking to a well-known actor not recently, a couple months ago. Matter of fact, you remember Stephen Sheldon?
Yeah, I know Steven Sheldon. I've communicated with him a little bit. He did that
Yeah.
Triggered or that Target movie.
Uh, yeah, and he played. Stephen Sheldon played in a film Gone in 60 Seconds with Nicolas Cage, and I saw some of his art. He played in one of my most favorite movies. When I talked to him, I said, matter of fact, I think I'm gonna call him soon. I'm gonna call Steven soon. But when I talked to him, I said, man, I said, you're one of my favorite actors. And he started laughing. He said, what do you mean? I said, man, when I was a little kid, I used to watch HBO, and I saw your movie Stepfather with Terry O'Quinn. Remember the movie Stepfather with Terry O'Quinn?
Hey man, didn't he do? What did he do? Like one with Robert Redford, like one of those either Robert Redford or somebody connected, like in the '70s, like a really famous movie. I'm trying to think of the name, but that guy's awesome. If you talk to him, tell him hi.
Yeah, yeah. Terry O'Quinn. Terry O'Quinn is one of my most favorite horror actors. Terry O'Quinn played Stepfather 1 and 2, and in part 1, it was so funny, man. That's one of the few horror movies you can laugh at. But when I first saw it, I was like, oh my god, this is insane. I was watching HBO, and this was back in the early '90s, and Stephen Sheldon played one of the main co-starred in the movie. He was looking for his sister's killer, and it led him to Terry O'Quinn, who moved from family to family, and he portrayed himself as the perfect family man. And at the last second, he would just flip out and kill the whole damn family. And in part 2, he ended up in a mental institution. He broke out of the mental institution. They made a part 3, but in part 3, he didn't star it. It was somebody else who played his role. But I told Stephen Sheldon, I said, man, I'm not joking with you. Stepfather was one of my favorite movies growing up, and you co-starred that movie, man. And he started laughing. He just started laughing, and it was so cool talking to him. And
yeah,
his art is fabulous. He's one of the few people in the entertainment industry you can really talk to, and he treats you like you're one of his friends.
right,
He's a really
right.
cool. He's the guy's been in movies with Nicolas Cage and all that stuff. But when you talk to him, he talks to you like he gives you the respect you deserve, man. And
He's
so,
yeah, man. He's an awesome guy. He posted when he was talking to Romola D. He had a whole series of posts he put up, just kind of
right,
just sort of expanding on his show or the movie he made and stuff like that. And I remember I wrote to him because he had brought up an issue, and I kind of was siding with him on it, and sent him an email about it. He was just like, "Thanks, it's really cool that you understand where
right,
I'm coming." And I kind of
right.
wanted to pursue talking to him more, but I didn't want to bother him. You know what I mean? So I just kind of let him be. But I was really excited that he actually wrote back.
There's others of them out there, man. I remember I wrote Robert England one time. He lived in Laguna Beach. Robert England wrote me back. Robert England played Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
Hell, Buffy the Body, the girl that was in the video with Tony Yayo from 50 Cent, and all that stuff. I remember I wrote her back in the day. She wrote me back. You know, a lot of these people, if you find an actor that you like and you're a fan, if you write them, a lot of times they'll write you back. Some of them will talk to you on the phone. You know, there's a lot of fruitcakes out there, so they don't like to just talk to anybody. But
Right.
if they see you're a legitimate fan, they'll talk to you. I'm a horror fan, so some of my favorite movies were horror movies, older movies too. Like, have you ever seen the movie Are You Afraid of the Dark? Not Are You Afraid of the Dark? Wait Until Dark. Sorry.
Oh, you know what? I don't know. I don't know if I've seen that. If I did, I would have been a real little kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you seen?
That,
What era? Do you watch horror movies?
well, when I was a kid, some of the first horror movies that I saw, and this was just by the luck of what was on just regular television. I got into the Tales of the Crypt, and I watched Toxic Avenger. And then after that, somewhere around that time, we got into Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, The Scream, Final Destination. So we're kind of logical thrillers. At the time, but obviously a horror movie is, but some were a little bit more psychological than others.
Oh,
I mean,
right. Oh my God! Like Nightmare on Elm Street. I know that I did a big thing on YouTube about my metaphysical breakdown of it, and I explained how the parents. I think I talked to you about this. How the parents were more responsible. The parents were actually responsible.
yeah, dude, we were talking about that, and when I did some research on that part two you were talking about, did you know that in that when supposedly the whole theme is that Freddy Krueger needed a host body. He was trying to manifest into the flesh again, basically. But I feel like we were saying, he never really accomplished that. They didn't really take that idea to a conclusion.
Right. Yeah. From Freddy's Revenge, he needed a host body. Yeah, and the original house from Nightmare on Elm Street is in the area of Los Angeles known as Mid City, and a few houses down, there's the house that they filmed Halloween, the Michael Myers
really?
Halloween. Yeah,
Okay.
the house. Okay. This is so crazy. The house that they filmed Michael Myers' Halloween is right down the street from the original Nightmare on Elm Street house in Mid City, Los Angeles, and they only used the Nightmare on Elm Street house for the first two films, though. After that, they only used stage houses.
Huh.
Like for 3, 4, 5, and 6, when they show Freddy's house, it's not the same house; it's a stage house. But
yeah.
Kind of like with Alfred Hitchcock Psycho, they only use the real house for the first one, then they use stage houses for the rest of them.
Yeah.
But, yeah, those Halloween, that was one of my favorite movies. But Jamie Lee Curtis, she's still doing the Halloween. But the thing I like about Jamie Lee Curtis is she brought her mother into one of them. Remember her mother? Was it Tippi Hendrix that did the birds?
Oh, no way. Is that? Oh, wow. I didn't even think about
That's
that.
Jamie Lee Curtis. Jamie Lee Curtis's mother is that's the woman who did the birds, right? Tippi Hendrix.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds right. I'm not looking at it, but it sounds right.
Yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis's mother is a famous actress. who worked with Alfred Hitchcock and a bunch of other actors, and a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know that's Jamie Lee Curtis's mother. And in one of the last Halloween, I don't know if it was Halloween H2O or Halloween Resurrection, I forget, but they brought Jamie Lee Curtis's mother back into it. Then for a little second, they played the theme from The Birds as she was driving off in that old car. And yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis's mother is way more famous. You know, she's more famous than Jamie Lee Curtis.
Right.
But yeah, those horror movies. There's so many. Matter of fact, I even saw her house. The woman from The Birds. She owns a farm, an animal farm, out towards the desert.
That's pretty interesting. That's kind of weird.
Yeah, she has tigers and lions and stuff. She owns a big animal farm in the LA area. And,
Well, let me ask you this, man. What do you think about you know how the rest not in LA, like if you want to buy a house or something, get a real estate agent, but what does Hollywood do as far as these stage houses? Is there like a group of searches out houses for sets, and like does their homeowners insurance change? Like what happens when a house becomes a set house?
well, it's just a normal house. The Nightmare on Elm Street house, it's still a normal house. They'll even tell you, hey, one of my best friends that lives in the LA area, he owns a whole tour company. He owns the whole tour company. When I first started coming to Hollywood, I met him. He started taking me on tours, and then every year I would come back and we would keep hanging out. And he's one of my good friends. If I show up right now, you know, he would be like, man, you want a tour? And you know, he told me, he said, man, it's just a normal house. The people living there, you know, don't go knock on the door. Be respectful. It's just a normal house. They don't have anything to do with Freddy Krueger. They don't have anything to do with you know, with Heather Langenkamp from Nancy or whatever. It's just a normal house.
Okay, so they actually let people live there. They don't just reserve it and keep it as the set house.
Oh no, no, it's just a normal house now. But fans from all over the world go there though. I mean, if I owned the house, I'd be trying to turn it into a tour thing.
Right.
The Brady Bunch house is just a normal house.
I didn't realize that was real. That house actually exists.
Yeah,
That's
the Brady
crazy.
Bunch.
That's kind of cool. Well, it's making me think about the Golden Girls house in Los Angeles. Even though they were like presenting themselves as in Florida, but apparently that's in Los Angeles too.
Yeah. I don't even need a celebrity. Like when you go down to Hollywood and Beverly Hills, they got the little celebrity map. I don't even need a celebrity map anymore. You can go. A lot of these actresses. You know who Lucille Ball is?
Yeah.
Okay. She lives right next to Jack Benny. You know who Jack Benny is?
Yes.
Okay. Lucille Ball, she used to live right next door to Jack Benny. So the Lucille Ball house and the Jack Benny house are right next to each other. And, you know, I'm sure their families still own it. Jack Benny's family probably still owns the house. And, you know, Jack Benny, he was an old actor too, boy. Did you ever see that small part Jack Benny played in that movie, A Mad, Mad, Mad World? Mad, 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 Mad World?
No, I don't think I did.
Oh my God, you got to see that movie. That was one of my grandfather's favorite movies. It's a mad, 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 mad world. And there's a little bitty part in the movie where Jack Benny plays a role where he pulls up in this old car on the side of the street. You got it. That's one of my favorite movies. You know, Jack Benny, he was an old actor. But yeah, you know, a lot of the houses that the actors lived in are still there, but the actual set houses are still around.
Yeah.
Remember that movie, The Exorcist?
Yeah.
I think in New York City, the apartment that the little girl lived at, in the movie, not in real life, the apartment where The Exorcist happened, that's still there. People go there and take pictures and stuff. It's just a normal apartment.
Huh. That's pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, you can go see any of the houses. You don't need it. You know, it's just if you're going to if it's a real set, then you have to have a pass to get in. And a set, they put sets together and take sets apart, you know.
Right.
But what about? Okay. What about? What do you think? Are you familiar with movie cameras, like the old 8mm and 16mm?
To like a certain extent, only because um, okay, so there's a format that did become really super popular, which is, I didn't mean to make a pun, but it is called Super 8.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember when I was a kid, and the first time I saw Rattle and Hum, it's like U2 was up there filming themselves, and the whole thing for the first like half hour is completely in black and white, and then when they suddenly went to color, what I think his name is Juno, Phil Juno, or Daniel Juno, who was their photographer, he like was using Super 8 for that, and so it was very highly color saturated, so that the jump from black to white was really dramatic. And I remember really liking that, and then oddly enough, the first video camera I ever got as a Christmas present happened to use what they call High 8, which is a variant on Super 8. And that was that kind of film back then. A friend of mine and I actually made a movie that ended up getting into a film festival, and I just remember thinking it was so amazing to me to see the color quality on that film. Even though it was one of those formats that was going to get replaced by digital. So what were your thoughts on that subject?
I love the old 8mm and 16mm cameras. The digital stuff I just don't like. You know, we use it. We have to use it. I'm impressed by it. I'm a hypocrite, I guess you can say. We're all using it. We all appreciate it. And the truth is, we really can't do without it because this is all we know. I wouldn't know how to go into. I wouldn't know how to go, you know, into a camera laboratory and cut 16mm. I wouldn't know how to do it. But I like it though. I love the old film, and I remember back in 2000, I think it was 2000 or 2011, something like that. I went to a movie theater, and you know, I asked them. I said, when it comes to the film, is it real film? And one of the guys said, you know what? This is the last year we're using real film. He said, after this, it's going to be all digital. He said, and it's easier too because the film reels aren't as heavy. And even when they have an old movie night, they just order the DVD.
Right.
I don't even bother going to the movie theater anymore. You know, the area I live at, one of the areas I live at, you know, Muskegon's a small area. There's a movie theater called the Cinema Carousel Theater. You know, I used to go in there. Last time I watched a movie there, I walked out. Not because of the movie theater, but because of the films. I don't like the films they're coming out with now. I can't. The films that come out now, I'd rather sit home and watch, you know, some old rerun or something on TV.
Right. It's the same thing too with music, between the analog recordings versus digital recordings. There's no way around it. The analog is warmer, captures more, and I mean, I guess the best thing you could do is record your album on tape and then maybe convert it to a CD. But I wouldn't record it. I wouldn't record the whole thing digitally at all. You know, I just think you're missing something. Then that's just. I'll probably always be that way because I'm from that generation. Other people you're just fooling yourself. There's no difference. But if you grew up with it, you can tell the difference for sure.
Right. Yeah, who's for sure. You know, I remember I used to, you know, I used to really, you know, get into those older movies, older films, how they used to make the older films, and that's like 1930s Hollywood before the World War II, before they started making the war films, especially. And you know, even today, you know, there's all sorts of researchers on YouTube talking about, matter of fact, up there in Laurel Canyon where they had that Lookout Mountain and all that stuff. And they used to make war films up there. and there's a whole big stir about it amongst researchers about the Laurel Canyon era and the war films and stuff. But the 1930s era, I think they made some really good films. There was a film called Devil Doll. Drew Barrymore's grandfather, or was it her great-grandfather, Lionel Barrymore, starred in the movie. You know who Lionel Barrymore is?
The name rings a bell, but it's probably like I probably just heard about him because of her. I don't think I've actually watched any of his movies.
Yeah, Lionel Barrymore starred in the movie. It was called The Devil Doll, and I cannot believe how they were able in the 1930s to create this movie. This guy went to the penitentiary for a crime he didn't commit, and he got out, and he learned to shrink dogs and shrink people, and he was using them to do his deeds, and he was trying to get back at the people who framed him, and the movie was a fascinating movie. It's called Devil Doll, and the no computers, no special effects, but they were still able to shrink people and blow people up. I mean, it boggles me just as much as Terminator 2. How did they do it?
Yeah, no, that's something that definitely that could be a whole show too. There's been some really great effects in some of those old movies that you just don't even know how they did it without CGI. But apparently, they had their own perception of magic back then, basically, and they knew how to do it.
Right.
Yeah, we got to break one of those down sometime. That'd be really interesting.
Yeah. How did they do it? How did they do it? And I'm going back this summer. When I get my money right, I'm going right back to Hollywood, and I love going there to ask. I like to, the amazing thing is, what they were doing back in the 30s and 40s, you can do now in your room.
Right.
I make film all the time. I go on the internet. I talk to thousands of people around the world who watch it. I make film all the time. And I tell the truth. I don't have to lie and read from a placard, or work for some crooked-ass media source. I can be myself and meet people and have friends,
Yes. Well, man, I was going to ask you what's... Oh, sorry. No, go ahead. I was just going to say, at some point I might need to jet because my dog is, demanding that I feed him. So I don't know if you can hear him tapping around here, but he's kind of begging, so I might need to do something about that here in a couple of minutes.
Okay. Do you want to put the phone down and we wait, or you just want to call back in a couple of minutes? That might be the best thing because we're recording.
Yeah, we can edit this part out. Let me call back in 5 minutes. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, man, I'll call you right back.
All right.
Bye bye.
Yeah.
This call is being recorded.
Yeah. So where do we leave off? Your dog had to,
we were talking about the Devil Doll movie.
Right. That is such a good movie, man. The Devil Doll movie is one of the best movies I've ever seen. It's a 1930s movie, and 1930s Hollywood was a really interesting time. A lot of people don't know about the real history of the silent picture industry in Hollywood. It's far more exciting than the 90s and the early 2000s. I look back to Laurel and Hardy, Harold Lloyd, Charlie Chaplin, like the Charlie Chaplin movie, The Great Dictator. They tried to show the public what Hitler was up to in Europe. The communists, Joseph Stalin, during the time of the silent motion picture, Joseph Stalin was very involved with some of the directors at that time in Hollywood. The same director, some of the same directors who did films in America in the early 1900s were some of the same directors that did the propaganda for Stalin. And Adolf Hitler loved radio. Adolf Hitler was one of the biggest radio speakers of our time. Adolf Hitler was in show business. Adolf Hitler was an actor.
Mm-hmm.
You know who von Leavensburg, and you ever heard of Richard Wagner, the pianist? All those plays they were doing in the early 1900s in Germany and Austria and whatnot, that was show business. Adolf Hitler was all involved in show business, but he ended up doing radio, just like Joseph Goebbels was the minister of propaganda. The Nazis loved radio more than anything. The communists loved film, and Joseph Stalin they made all sorts of movies in the Soviet Union, and some of the directors in Hollywood were also involved in Stalin's propaganda team in Moscow. And
I think you broke up for a second on my end. I know you were talking about the Soviets
right,
film, right?
I was talking about Adolf Hitler was in show business. When Adolf Hitler was around, radio was real big. This is way before our time. Radio used to be the biggest thing before film.
Right.
And television didn't come out till I guess if you really had the money for it, you could have got a TV in 1947, but nobody really was watching TV till the 50s. But the Nazis loved radio. And so Adolf Hitler was in show business with Joseph Goebbels, the minister of propaganda. The Nazis put out some really good films too. Like Himmler during his expeditions to Tibet. They did films where they went to Tibet and they hung out with the Buddhists, and lo and behold, they brought Buddhists back to Berlin. Buddhism was becoming one of the Nazis' main religions. And,
oh, really?
Yeah. They were the grand motif. Hitler was involved with the Arabs, and they were bringing. The Nazis loved show business. They loved filming stuff. They loved radio, but radio was the biggest thing. Then the communists did marvelous work with film. If you can go back and watch Lenin and Stalin, all these people in film, and the same directors and producers that were in the early days of Hollywood, of course, were Jewish. Who does the best film? Jewish people. Jewish people do some of the best film work. Everybody knows how talented Jewish people are when it comes to the arts. The same people involved with Stalin were some of the same people involved with the early directors in Hollywood. And a lot of people have not really got into people don't know show business. They don't know, what it really took to put entertainment together and you get these films out there to the rest of the world. It took a lot. And so, that's why when I go watch films, I like watching the early 1900s films, the 1930s films, because I enjoy the history behind the films.
You know who you'd probably really be interested in? You heard of Leni Riefenstahl?
Leni who?
Leni Riefenstahl. She was a woman who was eventually one of Hitler's main propaganda filmmakers. And there's a whole documentary on her. I actually saw it in like 1996, 97, because it became relevant to an English class I was taking, and there was a film festival, and they happened to have it showing on campus, and it was really interesting to hear her story, because she became like one of his like right hand people as far as some of the propaganda movies and the filming and the directing of them.
Right, absolutely. And I think 1930s art in Germany should be looked at. The world has some sort of view like no one's supposed to care about German history or German art because of the Holocaust. And although the Holocaust was horrible, a lot of terrible things happened, we should not shun our back from it. We should embrace it and also look beyond the horror that people went through in the Holocaust and find out who were these artists in Berlin back in the 1920s. Berlin, Germany, and the rest of Germany had some brilliant filmmakers, some brilliant artists. When the Nazis came along, a lot of them, through choice or through force, had to work for the politics of the time. But, there's still some, like my grandfather played piano. He used to listen to some of Richard Wagner's music. Richard Wagner was one of the top pianists during the reign of the Nazis.
Mhm.
In Israel, they didn't even want to play his music.
Right.
Because of his affiliation with the Nazi Party, but it was still show business. It was still show business. And have you ever seen that horror film, Puppet Master?
Let's say that one more time because you're still cutting out a little bit.
Have you ever seen the horror film Puppet Master?
No, I don't think I've seen that.
Okay, well, Puppet Master is a horror film, and it was put out by Full Moon. Full Moon is like a small film company. They're larger now, but back in the late 80s, early 90s, they started the Puppet Master series, and Andre Toulon, who was hiding his magic from the Nazis, he ended up killing himself when they were looking for it, and he hid his magic with the puppets. And with it's ancient Egyptian magic, actually has to do with the pineal gland, getting the chemical out of the pineal gland, the dimethyltryptamine. Somehow, through Egyptian magic, he animates the puppets and brings them to life. And there's like a whole, they're still making Puppet Master films, but it was films based around, the Nazis at the time. And when I first started watching Puppet Master, that's what really got me interested in German films. And that was when I was a little kid.
That's pretty
interesting. Yeah, sure. I even speak a little German.
Did it come on like regular TV or was it on cable?
It came on HBO.
Okay.
It came on HBO. And but after I watched it as a child, later on in my life, I would see German films, and I would sit back and watch them, and they had some really good films that they are making over there. Of course you got to read the subtitles, but
yeah, definitely do. And there's just some type of crossover. That'd be another whole subject too, to just look at the evolution of Hollywood during the war.
Right.
We already know, they participated, and then they participated with us, and it's like, from my own inside knowledge, what I understand is that they're in the CIA, they have liaisons. There's always a liaison to the film industry, a liaison to the music industry, and I say that not just one. There's probably more than one, but that's kind of how some of the films now that come out that have like the predictive programming in them and things like that get made. Is that somebody from the government comes to them and tells them, look, we want you to make this movie and we want this to be in here. And to me, it's like, in some way, they kind of are doing a service by preparing for things, but they also seem to know, they know more than they're saying. And so when you have an industry that's not supposed to be an official government industry or organization that's out there with some of this information, I kind of have a disagreement with that.
Well, I don't know too much about that. I just know about the films, but I do know in any area of the world, you're going to have people. In any area of the world, you're going to have the country involved with filmmaking. For the simple fact is, you can scare people. Remember when Orson Welles came out with War of the Worlds?
Right.
Orson Welles, they let Orson Welles go on the air, and he came out with War of the Worlds, and people started committing suicide everywhere. So, you would think if you have a country and you have a government, they're going to want to know what's going on, because if something like that could happen back in the 30s, what do you think can happen now? Somebody could come out with some stuff on on the news or on television and scare the hell out of people, and half the country will be, trying to commit suicide. So that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, that
Right.
aspect of it is disturbing, um, but it is interesting to even just look at the movies that they put out that were sort of part of their campaign, and as to whether those movies were actually good movies. Some of them were. Some of them were really good movies, and some of them were more like after-school specials, you know. But
Right.
they were
Well,
definitely looking for the.
I did a film. I did a presentation the other night talking about the Cold War, and I was explaining that in the television show The Brady Bunch, if you pay attention, it's a Cold War film based on capitalism, where the Brady Bunch was casted to play a role of always being happy, always smiling. They always had enough to eat. If there was an issue, the father could handle it. The basic common logic, and that was the idealism that capitalism was promoting at that time during the Cold War, late 60s. This is when people were still hiding under their desks, still doing the under the desk drills in case the bomb dropped. People still had bomb shelters in their basement. So, and a lot of people didn't get that. That television shows like the Brady Bunch, the Partridge Family, even shows like What's Happening with Freddie Stubbs rerun, how he wears that little red beret cap. Shows like this were oriented towards the Cold War.
Right.
So whoever else was looking at American TV, they're going to see capitalistic ideals. That's always, that's always been a thing going on.
Right.
And that's just something that's out there. If you look at not German TV, but if you look at Chinese television or Russian television, you're going to see the same stuff.
Mhm.
I don't think even a news anchorman, I don't think they can say whatever they want to say. They have to read a script word for word.
Right. Right.
And
Exactly.
right. Just like the Orson Welles scenario, War of the Worlds, where people start committing suicide. You have to have hey, you're not going to work in my corporation and get on television and say whatever you want. You're not smart enough to do that. You know what I mean? I mean, that's probably how they feel.
Mhm.
You're not intelligent enough. You run a newspaper. You're not intelligent enough to add your opinion. This is what you're going to say. And so, but going back decades ago, though, we used to have a time where journalists could say what they want to say. Did you see those newspaper articles I presented on the 1950s?
I don't think so. No.
Back in the early 1950s, there was newspaper articles coming out about flying saucers from mainstream from the mainstream news companies, and the Air Force was on there. Everybody was in the newspaper talking about flying saucers and going to Washington. I mean, this isn't a joke. I'm serious.
Right. No. I remember
most people don't know that.
Well, ever since Roswell, it was like a thing for
Right.
a good amount of time, right? And
Right.
to
Right.
this day, yeah, ever since. I mean, it's not as prevalent now. They still sometimes do it, but they usually do it when there's like like a meteor or a bolide or something that like some cop catches on his dash cam, and they're like, "Hey, look, man, over this small town over here, we had this thing flying," and that's pretty much it. Um, so it's like I agree with you. There's not really journalism anymore in TV news to a large extent. I mean, maybe if they're doing like if it's like Channel 7, like it's a 7 on your side, and we found out this roofing company is scamming you. Like those are pretty legit. Those are real investigative news stories. But anything that's happening on a grander scale, no. It's like I think they're reading it. Their editors are just reading what the network wants them to say, and probably the NBC, ABC, CBS, is going to influence everything that your local news station says to you, pretty much.
Right. That's why I don't watch television. I don't read the newspaper. I don't watch television. I don't believe anything. Even the local Chronicle here in Muskegon, I don't even look at it because I know there's nothing in it worth reading. Most of the information I read is alternative media specialists, people, online who give alternative media stories. Like I listen to you more than I listen to Fox News or CNN.
Right.
Right. I don't ever listen to them. I mean, when I do read newspapers, I'm reading newspapers like from the 40s.
Yeah, exactly. You have to, because if you want to trace you're going to trace where all this stuff started that's happening right now. I mean, that's one way to do it. Because everything's obfuscated, everything's covered up. But if you go back and you read papers, watch movies from 30, 40 years ago, you start to get an idea of who the players are, and you kind of start to see how one thing led to another.
Right. Yeah. I was just doing some research recently. I just presented a video about the Cold War, and down around where Cuba is, there's pyramids at the bottom of the ocean, and I was presenting underneath the Bahamas, there's pyramids from Atlantis.
Which one was this? What part of the world was this? Was this more close to South America, or was this the other?
No, this is by Cuba. Okay. On the bottom of the floor, by the bottom of the ocean floor, in the Caribbean, by the Bahamas, by the Bermuda Triangle, there's pyramids on the bottom of the ocean floor, and this is on Google Images. This isn't anything secret. Like the whole world can just go on Google Images and look at it, and it never ceases to amaze me. Like people sit there and watch Michael Jackson on the news for 4 months, and they watch Anna Nicole Smith on the news for 4 months, but nobody's talking for 4 minutes on the news about pyramids at the bottom of the ocean floor.
Right.
And why are there pyramids on the bottom of the ocean floor? Where did these pyramids come from? Who built them? They're on the bottom of the ocean floor. Why aren't people talking about it?
Right.
And obviously these pyramids are older, are similarly related to the Giza pyramids. And that being said, it's obvious during the Cold War, the Americans were down there looking at these pyramids, and the Russians also wanted to know what were these pyramids about. I think inherently that was a big aspect of the Cuban Missile Crisis, was securing these pyramids, because the ancient Atlanteans had technology. So if the Chinese got them, or if the Russians got them, that would be a serious thing. Hey,
right.
There could be technology or information in these pyramids that can get you, to the moon, or that can get you to Mars. Whoever gets this information in these pyramids, which there's pictures of it on Google, can get that technology. And so I think that was a big part of the Cold War. And I had presented a presentation on that, and I just don't know if, I'm still trying to figure out, is the public too stupid to get that? Because they're talking about Anna Nicole Smith for 4 months.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? That's why I don't watch the news, because there's nothing in the news worth watching.
No, because there's nothing that comes from it that actually tells anybody what step can you take as an average person. Whereas what you're saying, if they were talking about that, I mean, that's something that could potentially interest a lot of people, and maybe nothing big comes of it, but somebody out there is inspired to pursue archaeology, and then they go there and they look at it, and they're another voice that has seen it firsthand. So most of the stuff that we're fed is just, well, this is what happened today, and this person's saying about it, and never mind, it's going to be 62 degrees tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of how it goes.
Right. They're too stupid. The public is too stupid to have real information. They don't know how to think or read, and that's the problem with alternative media. Is only a small percentage of the people watching it, can actually process real information.
Right.
And so, but yeah, so in the movies, and going back to what you were saying, Josh, in the movies do three things. They show you what has happened, they show you what is happening, and they show you what's going to happen. And so you can learn a lot by watching film. Even I'm still watching films from the 1950s about extraterrestrials.
Mhm.
You know, did you ever check out that Jack Kevorkian?
Oh, did Kevorkian? I know about Kevorkian, the anesthesia or euthanasia guy.
Yeah, that shows you how insane the medical industry in Michigan is. The medical industry in Michigan is like the laugh of the. But the Jack Kevorkian? What was his deal?
I don't know. I mean, that goes back to when I was a kid. You know, we used to not like joke about it, but we were just kind of like, you know, this is pretty serious. It was pretty scary to like see that actually was being considered. But at the same time, when you'd watch the people that were asking for him to do it, like the really severe cancer patients, you know, if he wasn't doing it, they might have done it to themselves. You know, is the only thing, because there are some things that are just too. You have a choice between like a quit, like a religion. Wouldn't you pick your way out?
Well, I remember my grandmother was an attorney. She used to talk about the Kevorkian case, and I couldn't believe that the state of Michigan was allowing a doctor to actually kill people. I mean, it is a national debate. Should a doctor have the right to kill somebody just because they want to commit suicide?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a serious question. And I knew somebody who was in the penitentiary with Jack Kevorkian. And I mean, Michigan has more prisons than any other state. But I know somebody who was in prison with Jack Kevorkian, and they said that all the guards in the prison wanted to steal Jack Kevorkian's T-shirts and anything with his number on it. When you go to prison, you get a prison number, and they put your prison number on your underwear. They put it on your T-shirts. They put your prison number everywhere. And so the guards in the prison in Michigan wanted to steal his belongings so they can put his prison number. They can take his stuff and put it on eBay and sell it.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's messed up. That's super messed up.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, that's crazy. And so a lot of times people say, "You're from Michigan." They say, "What do you think of Jack Kevorkian?" I don't know. That's just the medical industry in Michigan.
Right.
But, no. But
it's like, it's just kind of like, I just wrote to a guy today because I was irritated. It's a legislator down here that, like, he's anti-abortion, but his solution to it is anybody who gets one, doesn't matter how you got pregnant, you have a death penalty if you get one. So basically, if your dad does it and it's your dad's kid, he didn't care how it affects your life or how you're going to raise it. If you get an abortion, you get the death penalty, you get the needle put into you, you're dead. And to me, that's just a sick thing. And I feel like that's like, as again, where film can help, because when we get in these cultural situations where people are making these outrageous suggestions, film is a way to like play out the possibilities of the consequences of your actions on like many different levels.
Right.
And like you were saying about the Brady Bunch, I don't know if you knew this, but in the movie Salt with Angelina Jolie, as a part of her training as a Russian sleeper agent living in the U.S., that's one of the shows that she watches, and they make a huge emphasis on that grid that they put all their pictures in. And what I find interesting about modern news right now is every person that Trump fires, every time somebody gets knocked out of the Trump administration, they use that exact Brady Bunch grid as a visual to show all the people that are getting eliminated, you know? And that's no coincidence. There's no coincidence between, I mean, those things are all on purpose. And it's real weird to sit here and watch it and see, some graphic designer made that knowing probably exactly what they were doing, and if they didn't know, then their editor knew it. They're editorializing with the stuff that they put out. In a way, they're making films, even though they're lying to us. And like that's like a blurred line that I think is somebody's going to have to come out and do something about it, because I feel like it's kind of is what is being used against our country to polarize people. And if people are getting polarized over stuff they don't even understand. They think they've got the news and they don't, and they go out and they hate people for it. You know, and that's serious. That's serious politically.
Right. Well, it's quite a story, you know. I like I was saying, I don't even when I watch, well, looking at the world, you don't even know what you're looking at anymore. You know,
Mm-hmm.
people look like something from the creature from the Black Lagoon. You know, I saw a guy the other day. He looked like It. You remember It with Stephen King, that clown or whatever?
Yeah.
He came walking out of the store. He looked like It from the clown. You know, I don't know
man.
what's going on. Yeah, but you know, the alternative media has provided a solid place for us to get the facts, you know, and be able to communicate with each other. And we were started off in the last episode talking about the entertainment industry. And do you feel people are overly entertained, like overly stimulated? How do you feel? Do you think there's way too much entertainment, or it's almost like ancient Rome, like a circus feeding people lions and stuff?
Yeah, man. It's like, well, it's everywhere, because I feel like we're in a it's like, because it's commercialized, there's like a glut of like having to put content out there without caring whether it's actually good. And so some people are trained to view, well, it's like when you're a kid and you get that star that when you look back on it 20 years from now, you're like, you know what, that song was like not that great, but I was so attracted to that person, it didn't matter. Like there's a little bit of that going on. There's a little bit of that like teenage hormone thing to it. And as for the adult tastes have shoved into a different media category. Well, this is adult alternative radio, or if you're over 25, all you listen to is NPR. And adult music is not presented sometimes with the same fanfare as the next up and coming young person, where it's all about their youth and their beauty and how amazing is it this person is only this age and this is their music. And the sad thing about that is that most of that is manufactured. Most of those people, maybe they've got one talent, they can sing, or they just are really good looking and they can kind of sing. And they've got a whole army of people who are not getting credit, who are writing their music, writing their lyrics, coaching them on their vocal melodies, getting them through their videos. And those people are like the anonymous ghost writers of this society who don't get any credit off it whatsoever, but I guess if they're officially employed, hopefully they're getting paid well, you know. But yeah, we got The Voice, we got Britain's Got Talent, America's Got Talent, we've got reality TV shows where you want to watch somebody knock their teeth out. We got Honey Boo Boo. I mean, you know, if you would look at it, you'd think of the Americans are kind of sick sometimes. When you look at some of it, you're like, why do you want to watch this, man?
It's like they can't connect dots or something.
Right.
It's like you know, it's like they can't. It's like the people cannot connect dots. They can't think for themselves. You know, I don't watch the news for nothing. I do my own research. You know, I don't believe nothing they say on television or the newspaper. I do my own. And you know, I hope in the future people go get a library card, because I got a library card and I love my library card. I'm not giving my library card up. I like to go to the library and get books and photocopy the books and sit down and read and stuff. And you know, you sit there and you see these morons staring at their iPhone, text messaging half the day, and they don't, you know, they've only read a half a book in their life. You know.
Exactly, man. And you know what? That's actually part of how I found that book I'm sending to you. I was actually thinking about my public library and about how, because it's a small town, you know, we've got kind of limited hours, and I was thinking to myself, yeah, I want to see. There's some books I want to read because one of my favorite bands, their lead singer is really into this author that discovers stuff. So I was like, I want to find that lady's books, and so I went online and I said, hey, you guys have a online catalog? Yes, they do. I typed her name in. They've got none of her work, but on one of the searches I did, I just the last name, and for some reason, just her last name brought up like all these books that were about mind-body connection, and that's where I saw that book sending you. And that was an accidental search. I just got lost in the library and found something I wasn't looking for, but but I was looking for, but didn't know I was looking for it. If that makes sense.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. We're, you know, in the books, it's like you got little book. It's almost like there's little gnomes or trolls in the library trying to get all the real books, because when you go down there and you look for good books, sometimes they don't even have the old book they're supposed to have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's certain books out there that they're trying to get out of the libraries, and that's not a conspiracy. Even there's little groups of book advocates complaining about how there's missing books. You know, and we're trying to get to a point to where, we can have as much knowledge as possible. I don't like reading those PDFs. I like to read real books.
And that's the thing too. Like some of the times, some of the books I wanted the most, it would be like somebody checked it out like 6 months ago and never brought it back. Basically, you know what I mean?
Right. Right. Yep. And it's almost scary because, like, remember Albert Einstein? They were saying Albert Einstein was crazy, and he was one of the most brilliant people of our time. Same thing with Ezra Pound. They were saying, didn't Ezra Pound end up in a mental institution for 12 years or something? And
I think
he was,
so.
yeah,
Ezra Pound was a girl. Ezra Pound was like a pseudonym for a woman, right?
Oh, was it? Yeah. I know Ezra Pound was a writer, but didn't she end up, or whatever? Didn't she end up in the joint or something, or in an institution? Same thing.
I need to look that up.
There was a black man in Mississippi during the civil rights era, and he wanted to go to college, and they put him in a mental institution just because he wanted to go to college, because he liked to read and study. Yeah, that's how bad it is. That's one of the stupidity and the insanity is appalling. I'm appalled. I'm appalled at the stupidity in this country. But okay, so we're looking at the entertainment industry. In the future, I would like us to. I want to get into some stuff. Are you familiar with microbiology?
Yeah.
You ever heard of the nematode? A nematode? There's
a nematode. Yeah.
There's some sort of There's some sort of I won't say not virus, but the nematode are on all the roots of all the plants.
Mhm.
Have you heard that before?
Well, I didn't know their relationship to So there were worms though, right? And they're very important. They're important to ecology. There's something that you can actually, I think you can buy. I don't know if it's the diatomaceous earth that helps those or not, but they're very important for gardening. What's your information on that? Is there like something going on?
I just started looking into it. When it comes to microbiology, you have algae and fungus, and I'm just fascinated by microbiology. And couple hundred years ago or whatever, if somebody would have said, hey, there's microscopic life that you cannot see with your eye on your finger, people would have thought you were crazy.
Right.
But somebody invented a microscope, and now you can see microscopic life through a microscope. And that just fascinates me, and I wanted to do, I think I want to buy myself a microscope and coming up And I'm really getting into microbiology. Microelectronics is something I've been looking at coming out of the Cold War. The microelectronic companies and, how they would put, the electrical boards together. And that's what's fascinating me. I was thinking maybe in the future we can do one on science, a subject, and possibly have some alternative, some references that most people haven't heard of.
That would be pretty interesting, actually. I mean, congrats too if you get that microscope too, man. Because a lot of topics, it's just good to talk about because it is demonstrating like critical thinking, you know, and nano, like things like nanotechnology, not just micro but nano. I'll try to find this article I read a long time ago, but when I worked at UT, we had a doctor in the biomedical engineering department who was working on the nanotechnology side of things, and she was describing how they were getting like living single-celled organisms. I mean, not just bacteria, but other types of stuff to build these artificial wires. Like you program a bacteria to deposit selenium, calcium, gold, silver. You could get it to sit there and deposit it in exactly the blueprint of your circuit board if you wanted it to. And I was just like, what? And she pulled out an abalone shell, and she said it's the same way that sea creatures form their calcium shells. It's like a process of accretion where they lay these pieces down. And I just thought that was fascinating. That's like a whole separate area that we have a lot of talk about that.
Okay. Well, we'll have to come back sometime soon, and I'll get some references. We'll talk off the line and get some stuff together. Maybe we can bring somebody on who specializes in a certain area, and we can move forward. You know what I mean? It'd be cool to have somebody. I just thank you so much. And I get people all the time be like, hey, thanks for coming out. I got people all the time say thank you so much, that video you did, that video you guys did. I didn't even know about that. And I always tell people, leave a couple dollars behind, so we can get some books and stuff. And I mean, if people can pay $12 to go watch a movie that they really have go watch some silly ass movie at the movie theater that isn't worth a fuck. They can certainly donate $5 or $10 to some real knowledge and information.
Exactly. And you know what, to that end, I mean, we're not kidding you guys. Like one of the books, I spent my own money today to buy myself a copy of this, buy Jameel a copy of this book that is called Where the Mind Meets the Body, Type A, the Relaxation Response, Psycho Neuroimmunology, Biofeedback, Neuropeptides, Hypnosis, Imagery, and the Search for the Mind's Effect on Physical Health. It's kind of a long title, but this guy, Harris Diensfree, is the author, and these are actual studies where doctors have found a huge impact of the mind on the body. And this book, that I'm sending him, this is like you get a good condition used copy between $3 and $6. It's not like somebody has to send like $30 or something. It's like real cheap. So anything anybody can do would be awesome.
Right on. Anything anybody can do would be marvelous. And people like us suffer ad hominem attacks. They can't really hurt the information we deliver because it's based on fact and it's well polished information. So they always try to make us look bad because they can't discredit real knowledge and facts. So they try to ruin our image to make up to make up for their own stupidity. And so, we tell people, be supportive, let people know what we're doing, tell your friends, say, hey, we heard some information on the interview, we think it's worthy, listen, put us on podcasts while you're at the library and stuff,
Yeah, you share the link to this. Share it on your Facebook page. Share it to one of the groups that you're in, and
Right
get more
on.
people to listen in.
Right on. Right on. Well, I'm gonna put this together for us, and we'll we'll be back together soon. I'll contact when we're off the line. I'll of course get back in touch with you, so we can figure out what books we want to get for the listeners on the next show. But we'll be back with some new stuff soon.
All right, man. That sounds great. Yeah, contact me if you want to brainstorm, and I'm gonna head out and probably do dinner because it's getting close to 5:30 here in Texas.
Oh, I want to say something real quick before we jump off. Remember that
Yeah.
movie? Remember that? Okay, speaking of Lionel Barrymore, Drew Barrymore's grandfather, great grandfather, whatever. You remember we were talking about she was in that movie called Firestarter, and she was using pyrokinesis to light stuff on fire.
Right.
I want people to go out and go on YouTube. One of my friends, he sent me an email and said, "Thank you so much for talking about that." He said, "I've been trying to make sense out of these Chinese Qigong masters who can light objects on fire."
Oh, really?
Chinese Qigong masters who light objects on fire. This is pyrokinesis. And Project Centerling, which was a well-known government project who was into psychic phenomena, telekinesis, pyrokinesis. I was talking about that, and a friend of mine sent me a clip of it and said, "This is pyrokinesis, and it's a Chinese Qigong master lighting newspapers on fire and all sorts of stuff on fire with his bare hands."
That's pretty interesting. We gotta do something on that one too because
Yeah, pyrokinesis is a real phenomenon, and that gets into spontaneous human combustion too. But we'll be back. Josh, I gotta, just like you, I'm gonna get off here and edit this down, but we'll be back soon.
Okay, that sounds good, man. I'll talk to you again soon.
Okay. All right, Josh.
All right, bye.